This episode is made possible by purchasing resources through the Creation Science for Kids store.
Welcome to the Creation Science
For Kids
show. How is God infinitely bigger than people's ideas about divine beings? We take a look at how the Apostle Paul approached the wise and sophisticated men of Athens as he introduced them to the real God, and how the first few sentences he shared would have blown their minds. Then we fire up the oven for a cozy chat about the science of baking. You might just want to grab a snack while you listen. Praise the Lord. I will give thanks to the Lord with my whole heart, in the company of the upright, in the congregation. Great are the works of the Lord, studied by all who delight in them. Full of splendor and majesty is his work, and his righteousness endures forever. He has caused his wondrous works to be remembered. The Lord is gracious and merciful. Psalm 111, verses 1 through 4. This is episode 50 of the podcast where we learn about Jesus, our Creator, and his amazing world. Hi, I'm Sherry Fields, your host, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Charity.
Hi.
To follow along with what we're looking at, check out the show notes, creationscience4kids.com/yeast. Okay, today we're going to use the Complete Jewish Bible to look at the New Testament. In Acts 17, the Apostle Paul had traveled to Athens, and after looking around, he was invited to speak up on Mars Hill itself to the people who specialize in just studying and thinking interesting things about the world around them. And they wanted to hear about this new God that Paul was preaching on. He started out his presentation to them in a rather interesting way. Charity, would you read Acts 17, verses 24 and 25 for us, please?
Sure. The God who made the universe and everything in it, and who is the Lord of heaven and earth, does not live in man-made temples, nor is he served by human hands, as if he lacked something, since it is he himself who gives life and breath and everything to everyone.
Thank you. The King James and quite a number of other translations say, God that made the world and all things therein. What I liked is the Complete Jewish Bible said, the God who made the universe and everything in it. Here's why I like it. When you look up the word world in Greek, it's the word cosmos. What do we use the word cosmos to mean?
Stars?
Yeah, out where the stars are, the entire universe. In a way, it can mean world, as in the whole place where any human being is. But in this case, it's an important distinction to say it's not just God who made planet Earth and everything in it. And I liked how the Complete Jewish Bible pointed that out. So, Charity, you like to read stories about old gods and all the silly and crazy things that they did. Here's a question for you. When you think about Zeus, or who's the chief god of the Vikings? Thor?
No, that's Odin.
Odin. Zeus or Odin or any of those guys. So, did Zeus create the universe?
No, but his grandfather's maker did.
Okay. Out of what?
He was a mist that had a conscience and made everything.
Mm-hmm. And was the mist spirit like the real God is?
No, because you could see him.
Okay, so he was made out of...
He's made out of both spirit and matter.
Right. So did he invent his own matter, or was that just part of who he was, that it always existed?
His matter had always existed.
Okay. So even though that's kind of different, it still goes back to that the substance that the universe in was formed from, taking the mist. It actually sounds a lot like the Big Bang, because the Big Bang has light that then coalesces into little tiny particles that eventually spin together and form stars. Doesn't that sound kind of similar?
Yeah.
Except we don't give the Big Bang a consciousness where it can't think and be aware. But yeah, that is a very old idea. This is not a new scientific. Anytime people are trying to escape from God, The people that Paul was talking, they didn't really believe in Zeus. They were beyond that. They were sophisticated. They were the first evolutionists. They were very much more like we are today than most of the ancient world. And when Paul said to them, the God who made the universe and everything in it, that would have been a whole new concept. Up to that point, whether you went to India or China or Africa or anywhere, all their gods were made out of the stuff that was eternal, the universe. And even today, atheists want to try to have an eternal universe where matter and time and space have always existed and then come and been shaped and formed and then eventually developed life and all. The notion of God being himself, being spirit, which isn't part of creation, and then making a creation out there, it was something totally foreign. It was brand new to them. But that is the God we worship. He is not dependent. And then the next thing that Paul pointed out, God neither lives in man-made temples nor needs human beings to take care of him as if he lacked. He is the one that gives life and breath and everything to everyone. God is not dependent on his universe to take care of him or give him life. Like in Star Wars, that's a good one to give you some of the more mystical ideas. In Star Wars, the Force, would it exist if you had a vacuum, just nothing?
No.
Yeah, that's a very old idea of how a more nebulous, just kind of fluffy God would be, that it's all around us. We would call it now New Age, but it's really a very old idea. God, the God we meet in the Bible, who actually exists, who really did make everything, is not like those ideas of God. He is himself and he created everything. That's a pretty big idea, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're going to turn from a very big idea to a bit of science that you've probably encountered in your own home. We're going to look at the science of
making dough rise. The easiest way to turn wheat into bread is to add flour and water, and then you bake it. But that would just turn into a flat bread, and if you didn't roll it thin, it wouldn't taste very good. So we go all the way back to the Egyptian. We've been using yeast to make the bread rise. Yeast is a naturally occurring microbe. It's actually a fungus. And to make it happy, you have to add something sweet to the mix. That's why even though you have a normal bread, it doesn't taste sweet, even though you know you've added sugar to it. Every time you make a yeast bread, even with cheese and garlic in it, you have to add something sweet, like honey. Besides sugar, yeast also loves being warm. When you make some pizza dough, you have to add hot tap water, but don't give it boiling water, because that will kill the yeast. The other thing yeast needs is air, and you need to cover it with a wet cloth, not plastic, because air can get through the wet cloth, but not through the plastic.
Right.
Yeast works by, when it feeds on the sugar, it puts out carbon dioxide bubbles, which get caught in the dough and makes it rise. Jesus talked about yeast in the Bible. He said how a little bit of yeast leavens the whole loaf.
Mm-hmm. And what's interesting about that parable, he mentioned you hide the yeast inside it and it's hard to see and it's small, but eventually it gets all the way through the loaf. Does that happen quickly?
No. It takes about 2 to 3 hours for commercial yeast to rise and be ready to make a loaf of bread.
Mm-hmm.
An interesting form of using yeast is sourdough. Sourdough is actually a symbiotic relationship between yeast and a type of bacteria. If you're starting sourdough from scratch, you have to have a starter first, and it takes about a week to have the starter grow enough to have enough to make a loaf of bread. What's cool is that the yeast eats one type of food in the wheat, and the bacteria eat another, so they leave each other alone. And both of them keep other microbes away. That's how they help each other, which is called symbiosis.
Mm-hmm.
There are several places famous for their sourdough, particularly San Francisco. You can also buy special sourdough varieties grown in Egypt, Australia, Saudi Arabia, Russia, and many others. Besides using microbes, you can also use a chemical reaction to make your bread light and fluffy. Baking soda, also known as sodium carbonate, is an alkali, which is on the opposite from acids on the pH scale. Baking soda is also very old. The Egyptian natron was mostly baking soda. They used it for cleaning. We do that too. And for mummification. I wouldn't want to try that at home. Because it's an alkali, it needs an acid to work. And liquid. Think of a baking soda volcano. You have your vinegar, which is an acid and a liquid, and you have your baking soda. And when those two meet, you get all kinds of bubbles. That's why when you're baking, you have to be quick. As soon as you add the liquid, you have to get the liquid evenly distributed, and then you have to put it in the oven as soon as possible, so that the bubbles don't pop before you've baked it. Baking soda was invented in 1791 by Nicolas Leblanc. This is his method for making baking soda. I'm reading from madehow.com. Sodium chloride, table salt, was heated with sulfuric acid, producing sodium sulfate and hydrochloric acid. The sodium sulfate was then heated with coal and limestone to form sodium carbonate, or soda ash. Yum! In the late 1800s, another method of producing soda ash was devised by Ernest Solvay, a Belgian chemical engineer. The Solvay method was soon adopted in the United States, where it replaced the Leblanc process. In the Solvay process, carbon dioxide and ammonia are passed into a concentrated solution of sodium chloride. Crude sodium bicarbonate precipitates out and is heated to form soda ash, which is then further treated and refined to form sodium bicarbonate.
Okay, so what's ammonia?
A kind of sickness?
No, ammonia is a very strong cleaning solution. If you've ever smelled your mom using it, it smells like really strong urine, actually. It's really disgusting. And then sodium bicarbonate precipitates out. What does that mean?
I have no clue.
Okay, so you've got a solution. That means it's liquid. And then the sodium bicarbonate is heavier, so it kind of settles to the bottom, like tea leaves to the bottom of your teacup. And then that is heated to form the soda ash. What was the problem with both these processes?
The chemicals used in the process are pollutants and cause disposal problems. An alternative is to refine soda ash from trona ore, a natural deposit.
Yeah, I wonder how much trona ore God gave us on the planet. That'd be interesting.
Well, I hope it doesn't run out, because I sure need it for more baking.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that most of ours is made with that chemical process that causes the pollutants. Okay, and then what's the last leavening agent?
Baking powder. It was invented in 1843 by Alfred Bird, a British chemist. His wife was allergic to yeast and eggs.
Yeah, I actually read where he also invented an eggless custard for his wife, and other people ended up liking it, and he made money selling that as well.
Speaking of making money, he offered his baking powder to the British War Department to provide sick soldiers with fresh, soft bread, and they bought it. The difference between baking soda and baking powder is that the baking powder already has an acid, usually either a calcium form or an aluminum form. Another interesting thing in the history of baking powder. 3 years after Bird invented baking powder, Herr Liebig, a German chemist, added stuff to baking soda, and it sometimes exploded. In 1889, double-acting baking powder was invented. It starts rising in the batter, then makes more bubbles when in a hot oven. That usually has sodium and aluminum, which acts better at high heat. It's kind of cool that science helps make baking and eating so much fun.
Thank you, Charity. Don't forget, you can find links to all the things we've talked about today, plus experiment you can do to see how yeast makes carbon dioxide bubbles by visiting the show notes page, creationscienceandnumber4kids.com/yeast or /050 for episode 50.
While you're there, we'd like to ask for your help. If you know someone who might enjoy listening to this podcast and checking out our website, would you let them know for us?
Every article I do, including today's show notes, has share buttons to make it super easy for you to pass on to your friends on Facebook or by email. You have amazing power to help your friends find out the truth with just a click of a button. And I'd like to give a special shout out to some new Creation Science for Kids Club members, sisters Holly and Tara. Their mom wrote to me on Facebook and told me this about episode 49 on loneliness and pain. The girls loved this one. They did an experiment with snow and what would happen if they kept their hand in the snow for a long time. They surmised that if they kept it there too long, they would lose feeling in their hand and possibly get frostbite and damage their hand. They now understand that pain is a good thing because it protects us, and God is good and always protects us. Thank you so much, Holly, Tara, and Mom, for letting us know. It really was a big encouragement. We'd love to hear from you too, and you can contact me on my Facebook page or by email, any way you'd like to. And remember, we'd also love to know if you have a report, story, joke, or other interesting idea. If you send it to me, I might just use it in a future show. Head over to creationscience4kids.com/podcast to find out what to do. Well, this finishes up our show for today. Until next time, have fun treasuring our amazing universe and Creator. Thou art worthy, O Lord, to receive glory and honor and power, for thou hast created all things, and for thy pleasure they are and were created.